2 months ago, NASCAR lost one of its all-time greats. Last week, his 11-year-old son strapped into a race car at the same track his father once dominated. And nobody in that garage blinked twice. This is the story of how a family turned unimaginable loss into fuel. And what happens next could shape the next generation of American motorsports. Kyle Busch, two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, winningest driver across NASCAR's top 3 national series, passed away in May at 41, following complications from an illness that started as pneumonia. Just 6 days earlier, he was on victory lane with his son Brexton after career win number 234. Now, at Charlotte Motor Speedway, Brexton is racing in Legends cars, small-scale motorcycle engine machines that top out around 140 miles an hour. It's one of the classic proving grounds that feeds talent into NASCAR's biggest stages. He finished 6th in a recent summer championship race after climbing back from 12th. Not a win, but not a retreat either. This isn't just a kid racing go-kart style stock cars for fun. This is a bloodline. Brexton's grandfather Tom raced short tracks in Las Vegas decades ago and mentored both Kyle and his brother Kurt before they became the winningest brothers in NASCAR history. That same apprenticeship model, track time, tough feedback, family in the pits, is now being handed down to a third generation. And the timing matters. Losing a father is one of the most disorienting things a child can go through. Add in the fact that this family's entire identity, income, and community revolves around racing, and you have a situation where stepping away from the sport could feel just as disruptive as staying in it. The Busch family chose to stay in it. That decision alone tells you something about how they're processing this. Here's where it gets interesting from a strategic and psychological standpoint. Motorsports families have long used racing as a stabilizing ritual after tragedy. Routine, competition, and a sense of continuity can genuinely help a grieving child process loss without forcing them to talk about it directly. Being in a car, focused on a wall of speed and a knife's-edge restart, doesn't leave room for anything else. In a strange way, the cockpit might be the safest emotional space Brexton has right now. But there's real risk buried in this too. Legends cars are not toys. They're dangerous. Brexton himself crashed just a week before this race. When a family is grieving, there's a psychological pull toward legacy, toward proving the dream is still alive. And that pull can sometimes push people to ignore red flags they normally take seriously. The question isn't whether Brexton has talent. Clearly, genetics and mentorship gave him that. The question is whether the adults around him can separate "this is good for his healing" from "this is what Kyle would have wanted." Because those two things aren't always the same decision. What works in his family's favor is depth of support. This isn't a single parent pushing a kid into a car alone. You've got Kurt Busch, a Daytona 500 winner and Hall of Fame inductee, physically inspecting the car before the race. You've got veteran crew chiefs mentoring him. You've got his mother present for every start. That's a support structure most young drivers never get, grief or no grief. If NASCAR insiders are being honest, the sport is also watching closely, because if Brexton eventually chases a national touring career, he won't just be another prospect, he'll be a storyline the entire industry leans into. That creates pressure most 11-year-olds never have to think about. Expect two very different reactions colliding here. A large portion of the fan base will see this as pure inspiration. A family refusing to let tragedy end a dream. A kid finding peace behind the wheel. A sport wrapping its arms around one of its own. But you'll also hear a quieter, more cautious reaction from longtime racing people who've seen young drivers push too hard too fast. Some will ask whether an 11-year-old should be carrying this much public narrative weight at all, regardless of how supportive the family is. Both reactions are valid. That tension is exactly why this story is resonating. Best case, Brexton continues developing at a normal pace through Legends in Bandolero-style racing, surrounded by his family's support system, and racing becomes what it's meant to be here. Therapy connection to his father and skill building, without outside pressure accelerating the timeline. In 5 or 6 years, he's a legitimate touring prospect on his own merit. Worst case, the emotional narrative around the Busch name turns into commercial and competitive pressure too early. Sponsors, media, and fan expectations push Brexton toward bigger, faster equipment before he's ready, physically or emotionally, and what should have been a healthy outlet turns into a burden he never asked to carry. Which path this takes depends less on Brexton's talent and more on the adults making decisions around him over the next few years. So here's the real question. Is racing genuinely helping this family heal? or is it a way of avoiding grief by staying busy? Both can be true at once, and that's what makes this story so complicated. Drop your take in the comments. Would you let your kid get back in a race car a week after a crash, this soon after losing a parent? If you want more honest breakdowns of the stories NASCAR isn't spelling out for you, subscribe to SportsWire USA. We'll be tracking Brexton Busch's journey as it develops.